Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to CAA Travel Talks. We're just going to give everyone a couple of minutes to join on the call, and I just wanted to let you know we definitely anticipate a lot of questions tonight, and we have a little Q&A box there just at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to drop in any of your questions, and we will be sure to address those all at the end of the presentation. All right, so it looks like we have a great number that are joining us. So I am Karen Taff. I'm the Product and Groups Manager at CAA North and East, and I'm joined tonight by Carrie Painter, who's our Operations Manager, and who also works very closely with our incredible travel insurance team from Orion, where we have Nick and Lindsay joining us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
So this is CAA Travel Insurance. You may know them as Orion Travel Insurance, and they are a great partner with CAA and CAA all the clubs. And we love working with them. We have a great relationship with Orion, and they're going to give you a lot of information today. Please ask us the questions you want. We'll answer them at the end. And now I would like to introduce Lindsay and Nick.
Hi, guys. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Karen.
Thanks so much for joining us. Okay, well, it looks like we've got a great number, and we will get started. Nick, I'll ask you to just advance those for me there. So CAA Travel, we have been in business since 1961. We are your one-stop shop for travel. We are going to be planning whether you're doing a worldwide cruise or if you're looking for a land tour or putting together a car, air, and hotel. We're going to help you every single step of the way. And of course, you can find us in our Ottawa stores as well as North Bay, Sudbury, and Thunder Bay offices, as well, of course, as online and of course on the phone. Whatever way you would like to give us a call, we're here to serve you. So CAA Travel, we offer our members some really exclusive member benefits. And through a program we call CAA Vacations, you're going to get amenities and benefits are not going to be found anywhere else. Some of the other perks are some like a 24/7 member care and best price guarantee. And of course, as I say, the most important thing that we have to pack still is travel insurance. For me, I always, no matter where I'm traveling, I make sure I'm covered. And as a member, you're going to be saving up to 20%, which is incredible. So, of course, whether you're looking for your medical, your cancellation, your interruption, and your baggage, the delays out there are definitely a lot better, but they're still happening. So you need to make sure that you're protecting yourself and your investment. Now, the other thing is check your passport. If your passport has expired, go on into the CAA offices. We're going to do your passport photos for free if you are a Premier or a Plus member. And if you're an Everyday or a Classic member, they're only $8.50. You can be earning CAA dollars with our reward partners, and you can actually apply those CAA dollars to your trip. If you need an international driving permit, we exclusively will do those for you in our CAA stores. Now, in addition to that incredible 20% off travel insurance saving, you could be saving up to 20% on luggage and travel accessories in our stores. And also with Shell Gas, you could be saving 3 cents a liter or 10-cent off washes and in-store purchases. So travel insurance, again, so important that we're protected, and we have the experts with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, Nick and Lindsay.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everybody, for joining tonight. As Carrie and Karen mentioned, there's a lot that we want to cover. We do think the travel insurance is absolutely the most important thing that you could bring with you on a vacation. In our opinion, it's a necessity. So we're going to cover off a lot. I hope you guys leave the session tonight knowing a lot more about the fundamentals. We're going to provide some tips and tricks, some of the more detailed stuff that we would be aware of as the insurance company, and hopefully you guys leave tonight a little bit more informed. So as I mentioned, we'll go through some of the fundamentals around medical insurance, understanding your health, medical questionnaires, non-medical insurance coverage, which is trip cancellation and interruption, and how you could purchase the CAA travel insurance product through North and East Ontario. So I'll give you a little bit of background around Orion Travel Insurance. You may have heard this name. CAA is our exclusive distributor of the Orion Travel Insurance product. So in 2012, AMA, which is CAA in Alberta, and CAA South Central Ontario got together and said, hey, look, all the CAA clubs across Canada are dealing with different insurance companies, right? Some were with Manulife, some were with Allianz, some were with Blue Cross. You may know these names. But it was decided that we'd be able to provide a better experience to CAA members by gaining control of the coverage that we're providing, and two, getting control of the claims experience and how many claims are actually being paid. So those two clubs got together and decided to start Orion Travel Insurance, and that's where we were born. And since then, we have become the exclusive insurer for the majority of the CAA clubs across Canada, pretty much every club across the country except for British Columbia. And we were founded with a few key values in mind. Seeing that we are a CAA company, we are obsessed with member safety. So everything we do with the traveler in mind. If we see certain things happening in the travel industry, such as what happened during COVID, or even what's happening now with some of the situation in the States, if we notice that there are things happening, challenges that travelers are facing, we are going to come in and try and include new benefits that would address some of those challenges that travelers are facing. And really, we were founded with the idea is let's look for ways to pay claims, not be the insurance company that's looking in the policy documentation, looking for a reason to deny your claims, right? We always look for reasons to pay claims. And I'll pass it off to Lindsay. She'll give you a few more details around what types of products are available for travel insurance.
Perfect. Thanks, Nick. Hi, everybody. So what type of coverages does Orion offer? We have three basic coverages that you can select from. So first of all, you would want to understand what type of coverage you need and really choose a product that is best suited for your travel needs. So to start, the most popular one that we tend to sell is our out-of-province emergency medical insurance. So this product will cover unforeseen medical emergencies as soon as you leave your home province. And for everyone that's thinking that you don't need coverage for outside of your province, you do. So your provincial healthcare coverage will cover some medical expenses, but it won't cover things like semi-private rooms, ambulance, air or ground, or return of vehicle. So if you're unable to drive your car or RV back, this coverage will provide that type of benefit for you. And then we move on to our trip cancellation and interruption insurance. And this type of coverage would cover losses that you would incur for a trip that was canceled before your departure date. So in the event that something comes up before you leave your home, you can claim for trip cancellation coverage. The trip interruption cover losses that you incur for trips that once you leave, so once your policy starts and you leave home, this will provide coverage for anything that's interrupted or delayed after your departure date. And then the third option we have is the package plan, which would combine both medical insurance and trip cancellation. So the next one we wanted to make note is for the before you travel and the travel advisories. So it's always a good exercise that when you are traveling to check if there are any travel advisories that are currently out there, as well as confirm with your coverage if it's going to impact. So for level 2 and level 3, or I should say level 2, there's really no impact to your coverage, but level 3, potentially there may be. And level 4, where it's avoid all travel, this would provide no coverage at all. So it is a good recommendation to check when you do purchase your insurance, to check with the travel advisory if it is a level 3 or higher before you travel. And next, we have options to customize your plans. So we do offer a bunch of different options for you to make it more tailored to your needs. So for the first one, for medical trip plans, we offer a variety of day selections with our multi-trip plan. So we have a 4-day, 8-day, 15-day, 30-day, and 60-day plan options, as well as the multi-trip vacation package. We offer 4, 8, 15, and 30 days. The multi-trip plans are a great option if you do travel a lot throughout the year, as well as if you are, say, traveling within Canada. It does give you the unlimited coverage while you are traveling within Canada. If you are selecting, say, a 4-day plan to the States, you don't have to purchase anything additional for the remainder of the year if you are traveling within Canada. And then we have the deductible options. So the deductibles, we do offer a variety of deductible options starting from $300 up to 50,000. This is a great way, and we'll get into more detail in that in a few more slides, to reduce your premium on your policies. And then we also offer family rates. So if it is a family of 3 or more, we offer a family rate. If there are any children on the plan, the children are under 25, just to make note. So any children over 26 would have to go under their own plan, but 25 and under would be included in that family rate. And then we offer the extra additional coverages. So you can really tailor your plan. So if you have a pre-existing medical condition, you want to purchase for a sports and speed activity that you're going to be doing in destination, and you wanted coverage for that, as well as the adventurous air activity. And we'll get into more detail with those in a few more slides.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. So the emergency medical insurance, we really think this is the core product. If you're gonna decide to you don't need insurance, get at least this, right? Trip cancellation, trip interruption, a ton of value there, and I highly suggest it. But I hear of a percentage of Canadian travelers that are deciding to leave without just basic emergency medical insurance, and that is a terrible decision. So what does emergency medical insurance cover? While you're shopping around, it's important to look for plans that offer you at least $5 million of coverage. There's a ton of other things that's important to look at, but we see products out there that offer 500,000, some of them offer $1 million. And just for an example, we had a claim last year that approached the $3 million mark. So even if you see a carrier that's offering you $2 million of coverage, I would say no. Don't try to save money and get the lower maximum coverage. Look for carriers that have a minimum of $5 million. We do offer $5 million of coverage. And what we also do is we don't look at the emergency medical situation in isolation. So for example, let's say you were to break an arm or you were to break a leg during the trip. We don't just look at the hospitalization and the surgery and the cast or whatever treatment you need for that specific situation. We try to look at the entirety of the challenges that you're going to face if you're hospitalized while you're on your trip. So in addition to covering all of the medical expenses, let's say you were somebody that drove to your destination in the States, right? We'll make sure that we could get your car back home. It's going to be tough to drive the car home with a broken leg, right? So that's just an example. Let's say you have an extended a medical situation where you're in the hospital for a number of weeks. We have transportation to the bedside for your family members so they could come see you and make sure everything's okay, right? So once again, we don't just look at the specific medical situation in isolation. We look at all of the things that come along with having a medical emergency while you're on vacation, and we introduce benefits for many of those things. Our assistance service is also there to help guide you through the entire process, tell you what they need, arrange for direct billing so you don't pay for things out of pocket, things like that. So that's the type of travel insurance plan that you want to find. You want to find one that's not just, once again, limited coverage or just covering specific things. You want to find one that covers the situation in its entirety and all of the various challenges that you'll face in that situation. So as Lindsay mentioned, do you need medical insurance while you're in Canada? Yes, it's very important. I'll explain why. There's a lot of things that are covered. The majority of the medical costs, let's say if you're a resident of Ontario and you travel to British Columbia and you have a medical situation there, I would say like 80 to 90% of those medical costs are going to be covered by OHIP. However, there's a number of things that aren't covered by OHIP while you're in Canada. So prescriptions, ambulance, ground or air, semi-private hospital rooms, ancillary fees. There's a bunch of things, right? So seeing that the majority of the costs will be covered by OHIP, we heavily discount the rates for the in Canada coverage. We know that OHIP is going to be covering the majority of that medical cost and that we're just here to kind of top up for the things that they aren't covering. So the rates are very, very attractive, right? They're super low cost, and it doesn't make sense to roll the dice for the amount of money that you'll spend on getting the appropriate coverage while you're in Canada. So once again, what could happen? Let's say you break a leg while you're in British Columbia. We'll cover the ambulance to the hospital, the semi-private room if that's needed, crutches, prescriptions, returning your car back home, the return airfare. Like this could end up being 10, 15 grand, you know? And I don't know about you guys, nowadays in 2025, I don't have 10, 15 grand lying around. So I would rather just spend the $50 that I need to get the in-Canada coverage to make sure that I'm not at risk to pay something ridiculous, even though I'm within Canada, right? So emergency treatment versus ongoing treatment. This is something that I wanted to clarify with you guys. Travel insurance, emergency medical travel insurance is made for emergencies, right? It is not made for ongoing treatments. So let's go back to the broken leg example. Let's say you're in the States and you have an accident and you break your leg, right? We're going to take care of all of that. You're hospitalized, you're admitted. Do you need a surgery? Do you not need a surgery? Let's say you get the surgery, that's fine. They put the cast on, you're there for a few more days, they do some follow-ups, and then you're stable. They say you're good to go, right? You go back to your condo or wherever, your hotel or resort, wherever you're staying. The emergency treatment in that situation, the emergency medical situation would be deemed to be over at that time, right? We wouldn't continue covering things like all of your physio for if you need physio for a year's time. And it's really made to cover that emergency medical treatment, get you stabilized. If you need medications or treatments for the month afterwards, that is considered part of the initial emergency. But however, ongoing treatments afterwards would not be covered by travel insurance, emergency medical travel insurance. And I'll pass it off to Lindsay. She'll discuss an interesting benefit that we have when it comes time to use the insurance. Hopefully you never need to, but here's how it would work.
Perfect. So as Nick mentioned, how it works. So in an ideal situation, the traveler would call our CAA assistance line, and CAA assistance would triage the call. So from there, they would decide if it can be treated, that situation that you're calling about, if it can be treated by telemedicine, if it would require potentially a physician to visit where you're staying, if that's applicable in the area. If it's required urgent care at a clinic, or if it's worst case scenario, you need to attend the hospital or an ER visit. So some of the challenges that some travelers face is finding quality healthcare service. There may be difficulty accessing necessary care where you are calling from. There may be inconsistent hours of operation at the time of need. There's also the emergency room charges that potentially could you could be faced if it's something that could be handled by a telemedicine call. So it is always advised, if you are able to call first when you do need to make a claim, to do so. That way our CAA assistance line can triage that situation and decide what option is best for you. If you are unable to call at that time, we either advise someone to call on your behalf or call as soon as you are able to. And again, why call first? So similar to what I had just mentioned, in a medical emergency or someone on your behalf does need to call CAA assistance first. Again, to find a medical provider, it avoids you from paying out-of-pocket expenses and arrange direct billing. And we do monitor your medical treatment. So if you are in a place where you're not sure where to go, again, the CAA assistance line will direct you to the closest location from where you are calling from. And really to avoid that out-of-pocket expenses. We do know that there are certain situations where it is upfront coverage, but a lot of the time we do arrange direct billing, so it prevents you from paying out-of-pocket. And then the last point, again, we do monitor your medical treatment with our CAA assistance team. So whether that requires you to be flown back home, that is something that is covered under our policy if approved and if required, to get that any ongoing treatment to be covered and looked at in your home province. So here are some examples of some costs of the unexpected treatments that when you are traveling. So say, for example, you're traveling down south and you get an ear infection. It could cost between $800 and $3,500. We have pneumonia, which is ranging from $88,000 to $250,000. For a broken leg, it can range from 15,000 to 150,000. Heart attack ranges from 135,000 to 310,000. And then for the air ambulance, again, it is something that we do provide as long as it's medically necessary, and it does have to be approved by our CAA assistance team, but that can run from 54,000 up to 87,000.
And I just want to add to this, these are just some of the average ranges that we're seeing. I can tell you, depending on where you are in the States, right? People travel throughout the States. There are a few pockets of very popular destinations, so Florida being one, California being another. I can tell you the cost for a heart attack and broken leg and all of these examples, it's probably twice to three times that in some of the states, such as California and Florida. So I know nobody likes to spend money on travel insurance. You hear the cost of your premium and you wince a little bit. But I'm telling you, a bill of $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 hurts a lot more than forking it up for the travel insurance premium, and making sure that you have that peace of mind that you're not at risk for a hospital bill of this size.
And then lastly, we have an example of a family Caribbean cruise. So this was a claim that we saw. So the situation was a child becomes ill on a cruise ship. The clients purchased the vacation package, and the total cost for the package and the cost for insuring their trip was $949. The medical condition that the child had gotten was tonsillitis, and the medical cost of treating the tonsillitis was 54,000 Canadian.
So could have been an even more expensive cruise, eh? Okay, understanding your health, medical questionnaire, and pre-existing medical conditions. We get a lot of questions around this subject, so we wanted to give you guys a little bit more information. So what do you need to know about the medical questionnaire? First, what's important, at least for CAA, when you're buying your travel insurance policy with CAA, the medical questionnaire determines your premium and not your coverage. So if you're answering yes to a question, it does not mean that we are going to exclude you for that condition. If you answer yes to heart condition or diabetes or a lung condition, doesn't mean we're not covering that. This is so that we could apply the appropriate rate to your premium, but we won't necessarily exclude you. That's more around stability, which I'll cover in just a minute. It's also very important to answer the medical questionnaire as accurately as possible, right? If you're unsure how to answer a question, it's very important that you go to your doctor with the medical questionnaire and say, is this accurate? If it's an honest mistake, I could tell you, we're not going to give you a hard time. We'll figure something out. But it's always like, if you want to avoid any headaches, make sure you're answering the medical questionnaire accurately. If you misrepresent your health situation on the medical questionnaire and you do it on purpose to try and save $1, I could tell you it's not a smart move. It's happened in the past. Let's say you're a smoker, you occasionally smoke, but you feel in your mind you're not a smoker. So you're going to answer no, I am not a smoker on the medical questionnaire to try and save the 30 or 40%, whatever the increase of the rate is. And then let's say you have a heart attack, right? It's not directly related to the fact that you're a smoker or not, but you did misrepresent your health on the medical questionnaire. You lied on your declaration, which means we wouldn't cover anything, even if you fell and broke your leg, right? We wouldn't be covering that if it was determined that in your medical records, there's nicotine year after year. Every couple of years, you go see your doctor. They do blood tests. We see there's always nicotine there. It looks like you've been a pretty consistent smoker your whole life, and you said you're not a smoker. That's where there's big problems that happen. Okay, so always make sure you answer to the best of your knowledge, and always be in good faith. Answer the medical questionnaire in good faith is really the core objective. Pre-existing medical conditions. So some insurance companies, this is very important to look at when you're shopping around. Make sure your pre-existing medical conditions are covered, okay? Some companies will just outright exclude any pre-existing medical conditions. Some of them will ask for a very long stability period, such as 1 year. So you'll hear a lot this term stability. We refer to stability a lot. And what does a travel insurance company mean by stability? I can tell you it's not the same stable as what your doctor tells you, right? If you've been treated for diabetes for 20 years and your doctor changes your medication, he says, "Yeah, you're stable, you're stable." But from a travel insurance perspective, any change to your health condition, to your treatments, the dosage or frequency of your medication, the condition itself, any new symptoms that require investigative testing, these are all things that put the stability of that condition in question for a travel insurance company, right? So your pre-existing medical conditions need to be stable in order to be covered. Now, depending on your age, right, this is how we determine what that stability time frame is. For the majority of travelers, it's 6 months. You have to have 180 days of stability, which means no changes. This list of things that I mentioned earlier, no changes in that 6-month period prior to your departure date. If you're 69 years of age and younger, it's 3 months. Or excuse me, 60 years of age and younger, it's 3 months. And we also have something called the pre-X medical condition rider. That's what Lindsay is going to speak about in a couple moments. That actually reduces the stability timelines even further down to just 7 days prior to departure date. So I'll pass it off to Lindsay to give the details on that rider.
Perfect. So as Nick mentioned, it does reduce the stability period from either 3 months or 6 months down to just 7 days. However, it is limited to 200,000 of coverage. So this is geared towards any client that has an unstable pre-existing medical condition. So in most cases, 200,000 is more than enough coverage for relatively minor conditions. If it is a condition that's a little bit more severe, like a heart condition, you may be hesitant with that 200,000 maximum. So we do have another option for you. But with the pre-existing medical condition rider, the rate does increase by 40%. It does, though, provide the peace of mind for that pre-existing, unstable pre-existing medical condition for you. If you need to apply that to your policy, that is something that we do offer on most of our plans. The next one, if you aren't comfortable with the 200,000 maximum for the pre-X rider, we do offer another option for you, which is called individual medical underwriting, which we refer to as IMU. So it is a program where you declare all of your pre-existing medical conditions and they are automatically covered. There is no stability period either. So there's no 3-month or 6-month period. If you do have an unstable pre-existing medical condition, that is an option that is open to you. So you can speak more to your agent about that. And again, it's more tailored to your specific needs, but the pricing is also tailored. It's generally a bit more expensive than our standard products, but it does provide the greatest peace of mind when traveling with pre-existing conditions, unstable pre-existing conditions, I should say, that are involved. So best case scenario, you are eligible for our standard products and you meet those stability requirements to get all of your pre-existing conditions covered. If not, again, as mentioned earlier, we do have that pre-X rider, which will add 40% to the premium, and it does have the 200,000 maximum. And then as the last resort, you do have the option to come into our IMU program, which is voluntary individual medical underwriting. It is the most expensive in premium, but again, it does provide the most value when you are traveling with unstable pre-existing medical conditions. The next one that we would like to go over, as previously mentioned, we do have the option to add on a deductible to your policy. So it is a good way to manage the cost of your insurance. We do see deductibles on our car insurance, our home insurance. So we think, why not start applying that to our travel insurance policies? So again, you can apply, we have a range of deductibles that we offer, starting from 300, and it goes right up to 50,000. So by applying a $300 or even a $500 deductible, those savings for travelers with longer durations, they potentially will become a huge savings year after year. If you don't use your travel insurance, it will bring down the cost of your premium.
Thank you, Lindsay. So as Lindsay mentioned towards the beginning of the presentation, we have three products, right? We've talked a lot about the emergency medical insurance. We've talked a lot about some of the add-ons that Lindsay just mentioned, pre-X riders, some of the deductible options. What's also very important is trip cancellation coverage. So what trip cancellation coverage is there for is to make sure that you don't lose the investment that you made on your trip, right? So essentially, if anything happens prior to your departure date, something that affects your travel plans, all of those non-refundable prepaid expenses that you put down on your trip, whether it be your cruise, your hotel, or your flight, we want to make sure that you don't lose that money, right? Some of these trips can be very expensive. The cost of travel is going up year over year. And there could be a whole bunch of things, right? Weather, natural disasters. A lot of the time, if you're just sick before you go, if your travel companion gets sick, if you're traveling with the kids, one of the kids gets sick, you can no longer leave, right? These are all situations where trip cancellation, the value of trip cancellation really becomes evident. So I highly suggest that when you're shopping around for the insurance, don't just ask for the emergency medical insurance, inquire about the package plans or the trip cancellation coverage. Like I mentioned before, one of the main reasons that people will have to cancel their trip, one of the main things that affects the travel plans is because the traveler or one of their immediate family members, which is a lot of the time, the travel companions get sick or injured prior to leaving. So these are things that you can't really prepare for. This is just additional peace of mind to make sure that you're not losing all of that money that you put up front on this trip. So the timelines, what we always suggest is when you book your trip, you want to get the trip cancellation right away. As soon as you put down any money towards that trip, even if it's just a deposit of $500, purchase the trip cancellation coverage. If you get it within a certain time period of booking your trip and actually putting some money down, there's some additional benefits that come with doing that. We have a benefit in our trip cancellation coverage called cancel for any reason. So essentially, if something happens, and I believe Lindsay has a slide on this a little bit later, so I won't get into too much detail, but if you have any reason why you want to cancel your trip, you wake up in the morning and you don't like the way your hair looks and you don't feel like going on vacation anymore, you have the right to cancel your trip with that benefit. So it's really, really useful, but you have to buy the trip cancellation coverage within 72 hours from the time that you put money down on your trip. Okay, so that's very important. The trip cancellation obviously covers you prior to your departure. Then we have trip interruption. Trip interruption is if something happens after you leave, right? So let's say while you're gone, something happens to the home, or you have an immediate family member that's hospitalized and it's a very serious situation. You have to come back home. We'll make sure that you'll be made whole for, let's say, the value. For example, if you booked a 15-day trip in a resort and you have to leave after day 7, we'll pretty much prorate those last 8 days and make sure you don't lose that value of your trip, and we'll pay for the flight to get you back home. So trip cancellation policies automatically come with trip interruption coverage. So it's benefits before you leave, and there's benefits after you leave if something unforeseen affects your travel plans. And then obviously we have the return date. That's if everything goes smooth. So a couple of things, Lindsay, I'm not sure, was this one yours? I'll cover it. A couple of things. If you know of a reason why you have to cancel your trip, don't buy the trip cancellation coverage, right? That won't work. If you know of something that's going to call you bought your trip, you didn't get the insurance, something comes up and then you try to buy a policy afterwards, that's not going to work, right? You can't do that. For example, if a travel advisory, you see a travel advisory, a level 4 travel advisory, it says avoid all travel. Everything the government's saying on their website says do not go to this destination. And for some reason, you book a trip to that destination and you say, oh my God, I don't really think I should be going there finally. You can't buy the insurance after the travel advisory has been issued, right? If you buy it beforehand, if you buy it and the government says, you know what, it's a level 2, there's no reason to be worried about the specific destination, you buy your trip, and then a month later it turns to a level 4 avoid all travel advisory, then absolutely you'll be able to use your trip cancellation coverage to cancel that trip and get refunded for your non-refundable travel expenses, but you have to do it before, right? Lindsay, do you want to cover off some of the exclusive benefits? Sorry, Lindsay, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. So again, as Nick was just mentioning, the exclusive benefits for CAA travel insurance, so the top one would be for cancel for any other reason. So that would provide you with reimbursement of 50% of prepaid non-refundable travel arrangements for any other reason not indicated in the policy. And this benefit is if you do book with CAA Travel, you would receive 75% reimbursement. So again, another great benefit to book through your CAA travel agency at CAA Neo, as you do receive 75% reimbursement on that, and then the 50% of the prepaid non-refundable. For interruption for any reason, reimbursement is up to 50% of the unused non-refundable portion of prepaid non-refundable travel arrangements for any other reason that's not indicated in the policy. Also reimbursement for unforeseen out-of-pocket expenses related to the interruption. So that could be, for example, like your airfare, accommodations, meals, Uber, taxis, or even car rentals. And again, if you book with CAA Travel, you would receive 75% reimbursement. For the denied boarding and entry, this would be reimbursement of the unused non-refundable portion of prepaid travel arrangements, and again, additional cost of accommodation, food, telephone calls, or if your travel companion is denied boarding at customs or security checkpoints. That type of thing. And then we have our bounce back. So bounce back would provide reimbursement of up to $200,000 for round trip economy airfare to return you to your home province and back to destination if an immediate family member is not traveling with you and is admitted into the hospital, or there's an issue at your home. So if you're traveling and you get a phone call and there's been a flood at home, this bounce back coverage would allow you to fly back home, deal with the situation at home, and then if you have enough time at the end of your trip, it would return you back to destination. Sorry, this is a Caribbean cruise interruption. So this is a claim that we've saw that where, say, it was a winter storm that hit the airport. The vacation package value was at 234 Canadian. And the claim was for $7,000. So situation was clients were waiting to board at the airport and traveling to US sun destination. But because of the snowstorm that hit, all flights got canceled. There were no other flights available. So the airline did offer credit for the missed flight. But they did miss their cruise and the fare was non-refundable. So they called CAA Assistance for help. They submitted the claim for a reimbursement of the non-refundable cruise fare, which was $3,500 per person. And they started the claim with the agent on the phone and submitted the rest of the paperwork once they got home. Other weather events that would potentially cause someone to submit a cancellation or interruption claim would be a hurricane at place of destination, volcano. So this could cause flight disruption. So there was an example, Iceland a few years ago that prevented any flights to land or depart. And the client is stuck somewhere, unable to come back, or say if you know that this is happening, you don't wish to travel anymore. So this potentially could be another reason why you're claiming. Flood, as mentioned, if you have a flood in your place of residence, and another option another potential claim would be if you're traveling and you don't like the hotel when you get there and you want to come home, or the hotel was unfortunately burned down with the wildfires that we've seen most recently in Whistler. That is another potential claim regarding weather. So how to buy or how to purchase the travel insurance. So we always suggest to purchase in person at your local CAA store. You can call as well your local CAA store if going in person is not applicable if you're outside of the store areas. And then online, we also offer our 24/7 online buy flow that you can purchase and find out more information about our products as well. And as mentioned earlier, if you do need CAA assistance, you can contact the CAA assistance toll-free number. It's 24/7. We do also have an Orion Travel Aid app. So if you need to find a location, this is the type of information that is available on the app. You can always email, and as well as we still have the mail option available. So for CAA travel insurance advantages, so one of the main advantages of purchasing your insurance with CAA is that you do get a member savings of 10%. So this is a great deal to add on to your additional savings. If you are adding on a deductible, you will also get that 10% discount, but any CAA member will get an automatic 10% off of their premium. Again, as mentioned, we have the Travel Aid 24/7 assistance and the 75% cancel or interruption for any other reason when travel is booked through CAA. We do offer COVID-19 coverage, the pre-existing medical condition rider, as mentioned. So if you do have an unstable pre-existing condition that you want that coverage for, we can definitely add that on. And then we also do have a very robust network of providers. So over 400,000 network providers in over 208 countries.
Okay, so I'll cover off some questions, some frequently asked questions that we get from travelers just beforehand. I know we're presenting a lot of the exclusive benefits here and the advantages of booking with CAA. We think we're the best in the industry. We think our philosophy when it comes to claims and providing coverage to CAA members, the values that we share with CAA as an organization really puts us above and beyond what everybody else is offering. However, the most important thing, in my opinion, is you have to secure travel insurance. We would love that you buy it with us, but just make sure you're not one of the percentage, that small percentage, or somewhat it's kind of big in my opinion, but that percentage of Canadians that doesn't purchase any travel insurance thinking they don't need it. Please don't be part of that group. I've been in the industry for around 15 years now. I've seen claims, $1 million claims, $1.5 million claims. I've seen people come home with $800,000 claims that they weren't insured for, and that's just something where you lose your home, your retirement is finished, right? I really hate to see that happen. So the most important thing is that you secure travel insurance, and we would love that you buy it with us, but the most important thing is that you get it from somewhere. So frequently asked questions. Credit card coverage. This is a big one. I know a lot of credit cards out there, BMO, World Elite MasterCard. There's the TD Visa Aeroplan, and there's a ton of them that provide travel insurance coverage. And a lot of the questions we get is it sufficient? Am I properly covered by my credit card? And the answer is you could be and you can't be, right? There's a lot of things that you have to consider. There's a lot of questions that you should be asking of your credit card company around that coverage. So things that we've noticed is that sometimes there is a limit on the number of days that are included in the credit card coverage. People don't read the fine print that you get with your credit card, right? They'll buy a 10-day trip. They'll only have 7 days of coverage on the card, and they think they're covered, right? Another big one, will your medical expenses be paid up front if you make a claim? So that's something that's you should consider, right? Do you have 50 grand that you could just cough up to a medical facility and then submit a claim afterwards, right? What is the stability period for pre-existing medical conditions? Are they even covered, right? Is your credit card company even willing to cover your pre-existing medical conditions? If not, that's something that I think you should be aware of, right? Is there an age limit? A lot of these credit cards will say From the age of 60 to 65, you have 8 days of coverage. From 66 to 70, you get 4 days of coverage. Past the age of 70, we do not provide any coverage. And what ends up happening, people get so used to traveling and relying on this credit card that they've had over a number of years that they don't read the fine print. They've just always relied on that card. And then boom, they're 71, they have no coverage, and they go on a trip and they don't think about the travel insurance. They've just always relied on that credit card, which is no longer covering them. And will the policy allow me to cancel for any reason and get reimbursed? So that's one of the benefits that Lindsay highlighted before. We have cancel for any other reason in our policy, which is a huge benefit for you guys. That's likely not included on any credit cards that I've seen in the industry. So I know CAA is kind enough. They have a checklist, a credit card checklist that I think is going to be made available on their website. It has these questions listed along with a number of other really important things that you should consider if you're thinking about relying on your credit card coverage. In my opinion, I would say don't risk it unless you're very familiar with what's included. Sometimes it's very difficult to figure out exactly what you are covered for, and it's hard to get a clear answer for the terms and conditions. When you're dealing with CAA, you're dealing with seasoned travel insurance representatives. They've been selling their products for years. They could give you all the context that you need around the terms, the conditions, what you're covered for, what you're not covered for. And you just have to speak to a representative. You're going to get, I believe, much clearer answers in a much more timely fashion. So that's credit card coverage. Travel to the States. So I know there's a lot of kind of turmoil. We got the trade war going on. We're hearing a lot of things in the news about people being detained, this and that. So we wanted to give you just a little bit of information around that right now. So if you were to cancel your trip to the States, can you get a refund on the travel insurance premium? Yes, you can. We had some questions saying, can I cancel my trip and submit a trip cancellation claim? Unfortunately, not. There's no insured risk for the time being, unless you have canceled for any reason that Lindsay mentioned earlier. You could use that and cancel your trip. And if you booked your trip through CAA, you could get 75% of that value back. However, there's no insured risk in the policy for not wanting to travel to the States, right? Technically, there's no travel advisory for the United States right now. There's no real reason that's covered by any travel insurance policy to say, I just don't want to go anymore, so I want my money back, right? But we do have that cancel for any reason. Will there be any travel advisories that can impact my trip? As of today, no. What the government has done just as today, and I believe this is just a few hours ago, they went and updated the entry and the exit requirements for the United States. So this is something that's available on the government website. You could just Google Canadian travel advisories. It's going to be the first result on your Google page. And that's something that you should be doing regardless of the country that you're traveling to, validating the entry and the exit requirements. What documentation do you need to enter the States? What do you need to leave the States? Are there duration limits, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? What extra documentation do I need if I'm surpassing that duration? Right? These are all things that you need to be aware of, regardless of the destination. This is not something that's new. And refund options if I come home early from a trip to the States. If you did not make a claim and you bought just an emergency medical policy, for example, for 3 months and you came back after a month, there's no claim. We would be able to reimburse you for that unused portion of your travel insurance policy. Thank you so much, guys. I know there's a ton of questions. I've just been getting notification after notification that there's things in the Q&A box. So we'll get to that shortly. I'll just pass it off to Karen and Carrie.
Thank you, Lindsay and Nick. That was a lot of great information, and I promise you we will get to all of these questions shortly. So working with your CAA travel consultant. So again, I just wanted to recap with CAA North and East, you can be saving up to 30% off your travel insurance. And the government website that Nick had mentioned is travel.gc.ca. That is the Canadian government website where we check for travel advisories. And that's, again, part of the role of your travel counselor. They're going to do all that heavy lifting for you when you're booking with us. We're going to making sure that you're covered, and they're going to check the requirements for you every single step of the way. So working with CAA, you're going to be eligible for those exclusive member benefits, part of our CAA vacation program for tours and cruises. And we've got lots of other perks, getting your travel accessories in the stores, your passport photos. Essentially, we are your one-stop shop for all of your travel needs. And And there we go. The last one here is I just want to mention our upcoming travel talk. So next week, or actually it's tomorrow is the next one, is we're going to be river cruising with Uniworld. So you can actually register on that upcoming event QR code there on the left. If you'd like to get an insurance travel quote, you can just scan that over there in the middle. And this recording, if you want to share it with your friends and family or watch any of our other travel talks that we've done, you can scan that and that will bring you right to our website as well. Okay, so without further ado, we'll address some of the questions. All right, so the first one is, please comment on travel insurance for seniors over 80 years of age with just the usual chronic minor ailments.
Yeah, so I think we've talked. There's no age limit really on our product. If you have usual chronic minor ailments, right? I suspect high blood pressure, right? A very large percentage of Canadians past the age of 60 has a high blood pressure. So there's really no restrictions if you wanted to purchase travel insurance. It really just depends on what are those medical conditions, what are the answers you're providing to us on the medical questionnaire, and are they stable, right? Will we be covering your pre-existing medical conditions? Your CAA representative will walk you through that and make sure that they go through all of the options to ensure that your conditions are covered.
Great. I have CAA medical insurance for a Florida trip. Am I able to add insurance now in case my flight is canceled?
Yeah, if you have no reason to think that you have to cancel the trip, you can purchase insurance now. You wouldn't, depending on when you booked that flight, you may not have access to the cancel for any other reason benefit that I was mentioning earlier. You have to kind of buy your insurance within 72 hours of buying that flight. However, you can get cancellation insurance for all of the other things that I mentioned. So if ever you were to fall sick, a travel companion falling sick, something happening to your home, we have a number of insured risks in the policy. I believe there's 35 of them. If any one of those things happens, then you would be able to submit a trip cancellation claim for that flight. Yes.
Is there an age restriction for any of your insurance policies?
No, I don't believe so. Lindsay, maybe you could comment on that. I don't believe we have any age limit on our policies.
Not for the emergency medical products, but I do believe for the vacation packages. I'm just gonna double check to see. I want to say it's up to age 80 or 85. But yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense. It might be certain
Yeah,
there
products. I
would
know,
be.
yeah, your basic emergency medical insurance, no age limit, but there might be certain product types that would have an age limit or a duration limit on that. So that's something that your CA representative would be able to assist you with.
Great. Trip cancellation, is this for any reason?
Yeah, like I mentioned, if you have that 72-hour, if you secure the insurance within 72 hours of booking the trip, you would have access to that cancel for any other reason benefit. And yeah, it's essentially any reason. Things that aren't really included in those 35 risks that I mentioned earlier, you would be able to submit a claim for those things as long as you weren't aware of you having to cancel prior to buying the insurance, right?
Okay, how do you deal with pre-existing health conditions when your medical insurance emergency medical with your emergency medical insurance?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I think we covered off some information around pre-existing medical conditions. It's important just to be aware if you're shopping around, make sure that you understand, are your pre-existing medical conditions covered? What is the stability period required to cover those pre-existing medical conditions? And do you meet that stability requirement, right? And then if the insurance company that you're dealing with says, no, we're not able to cover you for that, CA has a number of options that Lindsay mentioned. We have the 3-month stability, 6-month stability. We have that pre-existing condition rider that brings it down to 7 days. And we have the individual medical underwriting that covers all pre-existing medical conditions regardless of the stability period. So we have a ton of options. We really want to make sure you're leaving without exclusions for those conditions.
Great. How does a medical condition under investigation without a definitive diagnosis affect your coverage restability?
It's a really good question. So if, let's say, you're undergoing investigative testing and you haven't received the results of that investigative testing or diagnostic testing, and you have a trip planned before you're getting those results, unfortunately, that condition will never meet the stability requirements of any product. Potentially, if you speak to our representatives, maybe with the voluntary IMU, individual medical underwriting, there may be something that we could do. But most of the time, if you're awaiting these results, You can understand from an insurer's perspective, we try to calculate risk. And if we don't know what that risk is, it's hard for us to determine what premium you should be paying to cover that risk. So I could tell you the majority of the time and the majority of carriers, that would not be a situation that we could cover. But I would suggest you speak to your CA representative. The IMU product we might be able to do something with that.
Right. We go to Mexico for 5 or 6 months in the winter. Is the multi-trip annual medical insurance going to help reduce the cost?
It could. It could. It depends if you're planning on taking any other trips. If you plan on taking even just a second trip with a trip duration of 5 to 6 months in the winter, a lot of times you'll save money by getting that multi-trip plan, whether it's a 50-day multi-trip plan or a 30-day annual multi-trip plan. You could save money even without the second trip. Sometimes it's cheaper just to do it that way. But if you have a secondary trip, even if it's just 3 days or 4 days, a weekend trip in the summer or in the spring, whatever it might be when you're back from winter, I can almost guarantee that you'll save money with that multi-trip plan.
Do you need a rider to cover a condition under investigation?
It's similar to the question that was previously asked. It's depends when you're going to get the results of that investigation. When are you planning on traveling? There's a lot of variables that come into play when we're talking about those specific conditions under investigation. So I would suggest you speak to a CA representative. If you get the investigative testing, you get the results, and then you're only traveling in 6 months from that date, you could potentially meet the stability requirements of our product, or depending on your age, that stability period may only be 3 months, right? But that's really a conversation that you'll need to have with the CA representatives. There's a lot of variables that we have to consider.
Great. Please comment on relative coverage of CAA Orion and the public service medical plan for retired public servants.
Please comment on relative coverage of CA Orion and public service. That's a really good question. I'm not familiar with that plan. I imagine you have a specific number of days that you are covered for. So I'm going to assume that the question may be if you're going over the allotted duration that you have on that other plan. If that's the case, then yes, CAA can provide you with coverage for those additional days that you need on top of any existing plan that you have.
We often top up for the public service plan for retired public servants. So you
Okay,
can
great.
call our anybody at our call center or go into one of our stores, and they're happy to help you, give you a quote for that too.
I
Okay.
see there's an addition to that first question for
Yeah.
the clients going to Mexico during the winter. If you come back during Christmas, then absolutely I would suggest getting a multi-trip annual plan. I would think probably the 30-day multi-trip plan in that case is likely going to save you a ton, because what happens is the first 30 days of the first trip is going to be covered by the multi-trip plan. We top that up until Christmas. You come back home. Then when you leave for that secondary trip, the first 30 days are covered again on that multi-trip plan that you already paid for. And then we just give you a top up up until April. So I would say absolutely, you're likely going to save a lot of money looking at that multi-trip plan.
Okay, someone's asking a little specific here. Do you provide coverage for travel to Albania?
I believe so. I would have to review the travel advisories. As Lindsay mentioned, depending on the travel advisory, if there is any for Albania, I'm not aware if there is or not, but I would say work with the CA representative. They'll go on that government website to review what the travel advisories are. They'll let you know if there is any impact to your coverage. If there's no travel advisories or it's a level 2 or level 1, then there's no problem traveling to Albania like any other destination with no advisories.
Yeah, that's definitely where your travel counselor will help you out. I have a pre-diagnosed condition undergoing treatment with a medical condition that's costly. If while I'm on vacation abroad, I forget or I run out of the said medication, would this insurance assist in getting me additional medication?
Excuse me, guys. I got something in my throat. I have a pre-diagnosed condition undergoing targeted treatment with a medication that is costly. That's a really good question. I would have to take that one away. I'm not too sure if we would cover the existing medication.
Okay, we will get back to you on that one. And do you have similar, imagine the unexpected costs for Mexico?
Sorry about that. Do you mind asking that again? I missed that first part.
Do you have similar, imagine the unexpected costs for Mexico?
Okay, so for Mexico, what we're seeing trending, and I'm sorry, I know we're getting close to time here, and there's still probably 60 questions. I'll try to be brief. Mexico is trying to implement a very similar system as the United States for tourist hospitals. We're seeing the cost of medical treatments in Mexico start almost mirroring the cost of what it is in the States. And there's very limited cost containment opportunities in Mexico as there is in the States. So what I mean by cost containment is our team goes and negotiates bills with medical facilities in the States. We have very limited options to do that with Mexican medical facilities. They also have some, I would say, questionable business ethics at times. Sometimes they'll take a traveler's passport, they'll confiscate passports, they'll force guarantee of payments out of insurers to make sure that they're getting a specific amount of money before we authorize any type of treatment. So Mexico's a little bit weird right now. For the last few years, it's become more and more difficult. So I can tell you that the costs are becoming exorbitant in Mexico, very similar to the United States, where historically it's been relatively low cost for medical treatments. It's becoming very, very expensive these days.
Okay. Would insurance cover being accompanied by a medical provider during your flight home if needed?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few options. Either you're in great shape, and let's say you just have a cast on your leg, you could take a regular flight back home. That's option one. Option two is that regular flight with a nurse. And then option three, if the situation deems it necessary, that would be an air ambulance with a full medical team that's watching you during the flight.
Does recreational cannabis constitute being a smoker?
I believe so. I think Lindsay, maybe if you could confirm, but I believe our medical questionnaire considers
Yes.
smoking of cannabis as a smoker. Yes.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Okay. What happens if you're having symptoms of something and more tests were necessary to try and figure out if there's any problems, but the timing of these tests can take months and sometimes more than a year to get the necessary appointments and testing. And then something happens when you're away.
Yeah, unfortunately, once again, if you were awaiting test results for that specific condition and you choose to travel before doctors have determined what that condition is and if it requires treatments or not, then anything related to that would not be something that we would be able to cover. But once again, maybe speak to your CAA representative. We have that individual medical underwriting plan that might be able to provide you some peace of mind for that condition. But it's best to speak with a representative on that.
Great. So stability means no change in medication. What about cases where medications are reduced because they're no longer deemed necessary? Is this therefore considered unstable?
A great question. And I know it seems counterintuitive. The condition is getting better. We're reducing my medication because I need less of it. Don't forget the insurance companies, they deal with actuaries, right? And actuaries are in the business of calculating risk. And even though your doctor says everything's going well, let's try reducing the medication. What your doctor is saying, let's try to reduce the medication and see what happens, right? And that's what the actuaries don't like is let's see what happens after we make that change. You've been taking the same dosage for 5 years. There is a possibility that even though the condition's doing better, the reduction of that treatment or that medication could have an impact and change the state or the overall condition itself, right? And that's why it does affect the stability for travel insurance.
Is there a limit on the cost when you get an IMU, like 200,000 or 5 million?
Nope, it'll be the maximum amount, the 5 million. We wouldn't limit, such as the pre-X rider. It would be to the maximum sum insured of the policy, which is 5 million.
Is it too late to get trip cancellation if you booked the travel months ago?
Nope, you could still buy it as long as it's well, obviously prior to you leaving. That's the only time you need the trip cancellation insurance. But once again, you wouldn't have access to that cancel for any other reason benefit, but you would still be able to use the insurance for one of those 35 insured risks that we have listed in the policy. So things like if you get sick or any one of those unforeseen, unexpected events that affect your travel plans.
If you booked a trip a year ahead, do you still need to be stable at booking time?
Yeah, the stability applies. And Lindsay, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the stability applies as of the effective date of the policy, which is the departure date, even though you book it a year in advance.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, the stability will apply from your departure date. That's when it's of concern to us, right?
Okay, somebody's asking, will this be recorded? Yes, this will be recorded and it will be on our website tomorrow. Does CAA offer a 365-day multi-trip insurance package?
So the multi-trip plans, they're annual plans, so they're good for 1 year, but they're limited by specific duration. So let's say you're somebody who takes multiple 2-week trips throughout the year. The plan is good for 1 whole year, but you're limited to, if you pick the 15-day multi-trip plan, you're limited to 15 days per trip, right? So you would have 15 days outside of your province. As soon as you come back to Canada, you could leave for another 15 days, but you have to separate that by a return to Canada. There's no plan, to my knowledge, that covers you for a full year. And you're also not allowed to be out of the province for a full year at a time. You'll lose OHIP.
Great. At what point must you report that you have a claim before losing the right to do so?
As Lindsay mentioned, as soon as something happens, it's best to call the 1-800 number immediately, right? As soon as possible, especially for emergency medical situations. For cancellation claims, like if you want to, like the longer you wait, the longer you don't get your money, right, from the claim. So the sooner the better. You don't want to leave these things kind of go out straight on too long, but um, I'm not aware of any specific
It's
limit.
one year, so they have 1 year to make the claim.
1 year to make the claim. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank God you're here. I'm not aware of all of these specifics.
Great. Is age a factor with cancellation insurance?
It's not, no.
Okay. Can CAA arrange medical insurance for Canadian residents who have been away for a while but don't have OHIP when they return?
So you'll have to look into expatriate insurance, and unfortunately, that is not a product that Orion offers. If you are no longer covered by your government healthcare plan, you would be considered an expatriate, or there might be another. You might be in a different category, but I know at least at CAA we wouldn't have a product that would provide you with appropriate coverage if you don't have OHIP.
We could look at, sorry, for that question, we could look at as an option, the visitors to Canada to cover as well.
Yes, those are that's what's our maximum on the visitors, 150,000, I think.
Depends. I think there's different options that you can select, and it would give you coverage up to a maximum of 1 year.
1 year, okay. So yeah, maybe speak to the CA representative. They'll be able to work out what options are available. But yeah, that makes me think of expatriate insurance might being a little bit more appropriate for that situation.
Can I add cancellation insurance even though I didn't book my travel through CAA?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to book your travel through CAA. There are increased benefits, but if you booked through CAA and you have that cancel for any other reason, like Lindsay mentioned, if you book the trip through CAA, you get 75% of your non-refundable value back. If you didn't book the trip through CAA, you could absolutely buy the policy. It's just that one benefit would be reduced from 75% to 50%, but the remainder of the coverage, everything else in the policy is the same.
If you have CAA emergency medical insurance and you're required to be flown home before the end of your vacation, is your travel companion also covered?
Yes, for them to come back home, yes.
Great. How important is travel insurance for a road trip through Canada?
It's very important. As soon as you're outside of your province, right? Some of the things I mentioned earlier, it's very important that you get that additional coverage. It's very low cost. If our multi-trip plans, you could buy a 4-day multi-trip plan. I think it's like $40 or $50, depending on your specific situation. Don't quote me on that. You'll have to speak to a representative. But that 4-day multi-trip plan, it's good for a year. It covers you for all trips outside of Canada up to 4 days at a time, and it provides you unlimited travel within Canada. So let's say this road trip is 60 days long, you'd be covered automatically for that full 60 days with a 4-day multi-trip annual policy. The other option is if you don't want that yearly coverage, you could weigh the costs. I think it's probably cheapest to do it with the 4-day multi-trip plan, but you could buy a 15-day, 30-day single trip plan for in Canada. And once again, we reduce we discount the premium of that because we know that OHIP is covering the majority of those costs already. So it's very, very cost effective, and it just gives you that additional peace of mind if something happens during this road trip, right?
Great. Could we review again the pre-existing medical condition stability period for an 83-year-old, please?
Yeah, for an 83-year-old, it'll be 6 months with CAA. Some other providers, it could be as long as a year. Some other providers will say, we're not covering your pre-existing medical conditions. For us, we ask for 6 months of stability prior to the departure date to cover pre-existing conditions for an 83-year-old. And as Lindsay mentioned, if you do not have that 6 months of stability for a specific condition, depending on the severity of the condition, you could look at the pre-existing condition rider that will provide you $200,000 of coverage for that condition, or we have individual medical underwriting generally a little bit more expensive, but gives you coverage for everything, all of your pre-existing medical conditions to the $5 million maximum of the product. So we have a couple of options for you there.
Right. Would our current CAA coverage cover car issues in other provinces?
I don't know if you're referring to CAA auto insurance.
I'm
It's a
Yeah,
great
that's
thinking
what I'm
question.
maybe
thinking too.
membership.
I'm
If
sorry,
it's,
I'm
yeah,
not sure.
if it's membership, then yes, it does cover you traveling within North America. If it's your car insurance here and you're driving your own car, absolutely. But if it's a rental, then you need to get in contact with CA Insurance.
Right. During a cruise with CA Travel Insurance, is there a specific procedure to follow to obtain medical treatment on the ship?
Not really. It's if you can call us in advance. So for example, if you think you're developing bronchitis, right? That's a situation where we're hoping that you call us ahead of time so we could say, okay, here's what you need to do. If you're having chest pains, you're not going to pick up the phone and call us first, right? You're going to go see the doctor on the ship right away. So it really depends on the situation. Best practice, if you can, call us beforehand. If not, you call us as soon as possible and you do what is medically necessary first.
What is the coverage for labor disruptions of carriers?
That's a good one. So strikes, there is no current coverage in our policy regarding strikes unless it is an unannounced strike. In Canada, unannounced strikes are actually illegal. So this is more applicable if this happens outside of Canada. So I imagine you're referring to some of the strikes that we saw recently. I think Transat had some, Air Canada had some, or there was a threat of a strike with Air Canada. There's no coverage currently, unless you're already away and like you're not able to get home. Interruption benefits could apply. If we're talking about cancellation benefits prior to departure, there's nothing in our policy right now, but we are reviewing the coverage. As I mentioned earlier, we're in the business of trying to see what challenges travelers are facing. Strikes were not as common, or the threat of strikes were not as common as they are today. So we're looking at reviewing our policy to see if there's something that we could introduce that would provide travelers with some peace of mind, some benefit if there's threat of strikes or if there's an actual strike from an airliner.
So somebody's living in the Ottawa area and they're maybe going over the border for some quick shopping trips. Are there insurance plans that cover these short, frequent, but sporadic shopping trips?
Shopping trips to the States, yeah, for sure. So one I just mentioned, that 4-day multi-trip plan, it's kind of the reason why we created it. We know there's a lot of people that live close to the border. The majority of Canadians actually live very close to the border. So this 4-day annual plan is perfect for that. If you're just somebody that goes over for a Friday, Saturday, or even just a day trip, that 4-day multi-trip plan, it's good for 1 year. It covers all of these trips that are 4 days or less. You don't have to call us every time you go. It's super convenient. You just get up and you go. You know you're covered up to 4 days.
And then same if they're going outside the province, let's say into Quebec.
If you're going to Quebec, you don't have to worry about that 4-day limit. You're covered unlimited for travel within Canada.
Great. What's the coverage for financial failure of a tour operator or cancellation of tours by a tour operator?
It's a really good question, Lindsay. Do we have anything regarding bankruptcy? I believe we do. We're getting into some really specific policy language here. So I would suggest, Lindsay, if you don't know the answer off the top of your head, let me know. But I think it would probably be best that you have that discussion with a CA representative. I don't have the policy in front of me, and it'll probably take a few minutes for us to go through that. So I would suggest speaking to a CA representative. They'll let you know what options there are. I believe there is something in our policy regarding bankruptcy of a travel supplier. So
Yeah, there is. I'm trying to look for it now, but I can't pinpoint it off the top, but you're right, there is coverage for that.
Somebody's saying, would you recommend additional travel insurance if you have insurance through, for example, Manulife group or group benefit plan at work?
So group benefit plans, Manulife is a really big player, right? They offer some really good products. I'm not going to speak badly of Manulife. I think we're better than them, but they offer good products. You just have to validate what you have available, right? Some of those same questions that we mentioned earlier about the credit card coverage, you should be asking those questions of all of your insurance carriers. I could tell you your group plan probably provides you 5 million, right? But that's something that you got to look at. Is it covering your pre-existing medical conditions? That's something that you want to know. What is the duration? So group plans, you could have 15 days, you could have 30 days. I've seen group plans that cover 180 days, right? So that's something, if you're not aware, you have to go find your group booklet, your policy booklet, and make sure whatever's included in those employee benefits suits your needs, right? That it's covering you for the right duration. If you have pre-existing conditions, that they're covered, 5 million minimum, things like that.
Somebody's thinking of doing a photography trip to the Galapagos. That sounds amazing. So what insurance do we have for damaged, lost, or stolen expensive camera equipment?
There is coverage, but it's limited. I could tell you, like, if you're bringing a $10,000 camera there, I wouldn't rely. I'll be very transparent. I wouldn't rely on travel insurance policies to cover the value of that. There may be something that you could look at. Actually, I've heard of clients discussing this with their home insurance companies, where you could get coverage for these really expensive items, cameras, jewelry, things like that, if you wanted to travel with them. I know we do have coverage, but it's likely if you're talking about a really expensive camera, it's probably a tenth of the value of that camera, if I'm honest.
Would you mind commenting further on the diabetes and adjustment to daily insulin? Would this be considered unstable?
No, no, no. So insulin is regularly changed, right? Ups and downs all the time. So that's a medication that's not considered when we look at the stability. When I refer to increase or decrease of the dosage of a medication, insulin, that is part of the treatment that it increases and decreases. It's the nature of the treatment. So that would not affect the stability, no.
Okay. Does unstable condition mean even if your meds are being reduced to improve condition? Example, I'm a post-bariatric surgery and along with weight loss are improved blood sugars, cholesterol, thyroid, etc.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, even the reduction of a medication, unfortunately, I know it seems counterintuitive. The condition's better, I'm doing better, they're reducing my medications. As I mentioned earlier, that reduction could potentially, in the eyes of the actuaries, have a different effect than what the doctor is expecting, right? And that's why it's a change. It is considered a change. We're not just talking about an increase, we're talking about any changes because the change is what could affect or could have a different outcome, right, for the risk. So
I paid a deposit on a trip several weeks ago. Can I still get insurance?
yep, absolutely. Well, just depending depending on if the deposit is 100% refundable, if the deposit is non-refundable, you can absolutely get insurance. The only thing that's in question is whether you have access to cancel for any other reason, like I mentioned earlier. But let's say you don't have access to cancel for any other reason, you still could buy the insurance coverage and have all of the 35 insured risks that I mentioned earlier.
So somebody doesn't have a family doctor or a nurse practitioner is very difficult. Does it make a difference when answering the question?
Yeah, so we realize I could tell you you're not alone. There's a lot of Canadians that have a hard time seeing doctors, myself included. And 10 years ago, every medical questionnaire in the industry says, have you seen your doctor in the last 12 months? And that just became impossible. It was no longer the reality of Canadians. That was pushed to 18 months. Now it's 24 months. So if you haven't seen a doctor for at least like just a general checkup where they do just blood work over the last couple years, then yes, it could have an effect on the premium that you pay. It wouldn't necessarily affect the coverage in any way, but it could have an effect on the premium.
Can insurance be purchased for longer than 30 days?
Yep, absolutely. The only limit that we would have, we could technically insure you for a year if you're sure that I believe, at least in Quebec, I'm based in Montreal, every number of years, the government will allow you to exceed the 180-day limit and retain your government healthcare plan, right? So the most important thing is there isn't necessarily a limit from us. We can insure you up to 1 year, but you have to ensure that your OHIP remains valid for that entire year.
How many days prior to your trip do you have to purchase insurance?
I would say don't wait. Like we've seen people buy a trip. Oh, I'm not going to get the trip cancellation insurance. I don't need it, or I already have it with a credit card, or I'm already covered on my group benefits. I'll buy the medical insurance later, closer to my departure date. People forget, right? And then they leave without insurance. And then they call us at destination saying, oh my God, I forgot the insurance, right? But imagine if something happened, even buying insurance after you've left is challenging. So I always suggest as soon as you buy the trip, buy the insurance. If you're interested in trip cancellation insurance, buy it right away. Don't wait.
If I have a multi-trip coverage and I plan to travel to BC, can I get dental treatment there?
No, not on an emergency medical insurance plan. Once again, this is made for emergency medical situations. We do have coverage if there's some sort of accident and you receive a blow to the face and that does damage your teeth, then that is considered an emergency medical situation. And if you need emergency dental surgery, there is coverage for that, but not for hey, a crown is expensive in Ontario, I'm going to travel to BC and get it and try to put it on the travel insurance. Unfortunately, it won't work. I would have done that a long time ago. I need a crown myself.
How would something like a knee replacement affect insurance?
It depends on the stability, right? So we view the pre-existing condition rider that Lindsay mentioned earlier. We see a lot of clients buying that for an unstable knee replacement. So somebody that just had a knee replacement, they want to travel a month after the surgery. They don't have that 3 months or 6 months that I was mentioning earlier, but they also don't need $5 million of coverage. That's where the pre-existing condition rider would be a perfect thing to add on, because it gives you the peace of mind that if something happens with that knee that's considered unstable by the insurance company, you'll have that $200,000 of coverage for it. But if you meet the stability requirements or the stability period of 3 months or 6 months, depending on your age, you might not even need that rider, right? It's just, we treat it as any other pre-existing medical condition.
Okay, what if you have two insurance policies?
So there's coordination of benefits that's done behind the scenes. You're not going to be involved in that at all. Whenever time of claim comes, we'll ask if you're insured through any other provider. So it could be a group plan, it could be a credit card, it could be another private insurance policy. But there is coordination of benefits that's done in the background. You're not involved in that process.
Can we discuss more about adventure, speed activities and coverage?
Yeah, so we have the adventurous air activities rider. So that's becoming kind of more popular. Once again, we saw a lot of travelers um, partaking in hot air balloon excursions and helicopter exclusions. Those were somewhat of a standard exclusion in the industry, but we saw travelers doing it a lot. So we said, hey, let's create a rider. Let's give travelers an option to get that additional peace of mind if they do want to partake in those activities. Same thing for the sports and speed rider. If you are partaking in any kind of, you want to rent a Lamborghini and bring it on a track, right? That's normally something that's not covered by the majority of travel insurance policies, but with our sports and speed rider, it would be covered.
If we're in a car accident in another province, would travel insurance cover the costs, or would it be under the auto insurance?
It depends, and I apologize. As I mentioned, I'm based in Montreal. we have a system here, like with the fees that we pay on our driver's license, it's covered by the SAAQ, and that's kind of the DMV in Quebec, right? I believe it's similar in Ontario, but you would have to validate. You'd have to look on your end with the auto insurance and with, excuse me, I'm not sure what the name of the people that manage your driver's license and your registration is in Ontario, but validate with them.
Does taking cardiac rehab affect stability requirement?
If it's considered a treatment, or if that's kind of an ongoing thing, what was the term, Karen?
Cardiac rehab.
Cardiac rehab. If this is following a heart attack where you had stents or bypass surgery or a pacemaker or something of that sort, if it's considered part of the treatment plan that you have, then yes, it could affect the coverage. There's a lot of variables that go into consideration for that. So I would recommend speaking to a CAA representative to clarify that situation.
Great. So there's a lot of questions now that kind of go into a little very specific situation. So what I'm going to recommend is please be in touch with your travel counselor. You can get a quote here in the middle if you're looking for some pricing, but we're certainly here to assist you every single step of the way. Our travel team are very knowledgeable. They have to go through extensive training with the Orion team before they're even permitted to sell insurance. So they're very skilled and knowledgeable. And I thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you so much, Lindsay and Nick, for sharing your information. Thank you so much, Carrie, for joining us and looking after our CAA group that looks after Orion Insurance and our members. Wishing everyone a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.